Hey, Danny here. So I want to talk to you today about discipline. Now, discipline is something that we often get confused with between motivation and discipline. Motivation is a state of feeling, so responding to how you feel. Discipline is doing something regardless of how you feel. I've just got this quote here from Samuel Thomas Davies. I'm just going to read to you. If you've been following along on Instagram, then you probably would have heard this a couple of times, but I'm going to read it anyway. Okay, so it goes like this. Self discipline is about leaning into resistance, taking action in spite of how you feel, living life by design, not by default. But most importantly, it's acting in accordance with your thoughts, not your feeling. What he's talking about here is taking positive action regardless of how you feel. Because if we're only taking action when we feel motivated to take action, then we wouldn't really get anything done. And the reason for that is the way we feel, our feelings change every 60 to 90 seconds, depending on sort of like what's happening in a given set of circumstances that are kind of going on in the world. So if we're doing stuff every 60 to 90 seconds, or we're responding to how our feelings are every 60 to 90 seconds, our internal and external world will quickly descend into chaos. And this chaos can often feel sort of like quite anxious and this deep internal conflict, which we usually self soothe through Instagram, procrastination, uh, emotional eating, or whatever it is whatever it is that we've learned to cope with this. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to explore self-discipline and how being disciplined is going to help you feel a little bit less anxious and ultimately help you become much more successful. Let's just think about sort of like responding to feelings and how we're feeling. So I mentioned just a moment ago that the feelings change every 60 to 90 seconds. So imagine what this could potentially look like. So imagine a football match, if you like. So we've got 22 players, 11 players a team, and let's say every single player on that team just completely responded to how they felt every 60 to 90 seconds, and they could just do whatever they want. There was no rules, there were no regulations, there was no values, there was nothing driving it forward. You wouldn't really have a start time, you wouldn't really have a middle, it really wouldn't have an end. There wouldn't really be any rules. We wouldn't know how to score it. We wouldn't know how to defend it. We wouldn't know how to be able to attack. We wouldn't really be able to do anything, and it wouldn't look like a game of football. It would just look like a bunch of people on a pitch just running around, doing whatever they wanted, like booting people in the chest, whatever. So we need these rules and these regulations to make the game move forward. Because I think we often get confused with discipline. I think it's always going to be a bad thing. It's some sort of level of punishment, and it's not. But it helps drive things forward. Because with rules, and if we are disciplined and we stick to these rules, then this game of football all of a sudden has a beginning, a middle, and end, an ability to score goals. And then each team is going to have a set of values. So some might be defensive, some might be attacking, and all of a sudden what you're going to have is actually a game of football that looks like a game of football that we recognise. Now we're used to this. We have this when we drive. If we didn't have rules and regulations when we drive, it would just be absolute chaos. So we're used to these rules. This is called external discipline. So these are sort of like rules, if you like, that are pushed on against us. However, we can have internal discipline as well. Now, this is really important because if we want to show up for our friends and be there for our friends, be there for our family, be there for our loved ones, and whether you work for yourself or work for someone else, and if you want to if you want to show up and perform well and be successful, then we have to have our own set of rules and regulations that are from us to drive us forward. This might mean that we need to exercise and eat properly so we have the right amount of motivation and the concentration and the ability to turn up and be there for our friends, family, work colleagues, or whatever it is that we want to do, and help us, achieve success, really drive us forward. Now, how we do this is through a self-governing system. So a deep internal value system, if you like. And we're going to talk about this next week. Not next week, the week after, actually. We're going to talk about this deep internal self value system. It's so important because it's such a driving force. It moves us forward. But we're going to talk today about just practicing the art of self discipline. So what happens when we are disciplined within ourselves? Then whatever rules and regulations that we've given ourselves, rules and regulations sounds very strict, but whatever our value system dictates is what we're going to do. So if you exercise and eat properly, you're going to make sure that you exercise and eat properly, regardless of what you do, regardless of how motivated you feel. Because it's easy to do things when you are motivated. Everyone can do something when they're motivated. Is when they're unmotivated and they don't want to do something, that's when it becomes a bit more of a challenge. So what I mean by this is, if your value system says that you exercise 3 times a week, so you're going to do that regardless of whether it's raining outside, whether it's hot or cold or whatever. You're going to take the appropriate action that you need to, because you are disciplined, and this is what your value system says. Now, in order to get to this point, we need to practice the art of self-discipline. So how do we do that? So the first thing we need to do is really focus on the process, not the outcome. Take, for example, wanting to lose some body fat. If we want to lose some body fat and we just solely focus on that, the amount of stuff that can go wrong between then and the goal, I hate body fat goals, but anyway, the amount of stuff that can go wrong is huge. If we focus on the process, so the process being showing up, eating well, making sure you go to bed on time, staying hydrated, eating appropriately. If you just focused on that and that alone, what do you think the outcome would be? It's fairly obvious, right? So focus on the process, not the outcome. The next thing, we need to accept our limitations. So what do we mean by this? So we'll take exercise again. I've seen quite a lot recently this 30-minute running every day. Now, if you aren't suitably conditioned to run for 30 minutes every single day, this is a really quite an overwhelming task. That's something that I probably wouldn't do myself. I don't think I would want to run for 30 minutes every single day. I think I probably could, but I think it'd be really challenging. So accept our limitations. If you aren't conditioned to do this, then do something that you can do, which leads me on to my next point. Pick something simple. The more barriers there are in between between taking action, the harder it will be to do, the less likely you are to do it. And if we aren't likely to do it, the more likely we are to fail. If we're going to fail, then we're not going to feel good. And if we're not going to feel good doing something, we're less likely to do it. So therefore, the motivation to do it will go down. And it really defeats the whole point of training discipline. So pick something simple, something repeatable that we can do all of the time, so we don't have to go hunting for it. So use the health analogy again. If you aren't used to exercising every single day, just because you don't have to run every day, but you can certainly exercise every day. But if you aren't used to that, then that barrier might be too much. So you've got to change something. So it might be a case of changing what the exercise looks like. And this is something that I do with my clients. I ask them to write down what's the minimum amount of exercise they're willing to do with the least amount of motivation. And that can look like anything. And it makes it really simple, because they could be sitting on the couch and go, I haven't done my exercise today. And if the simplest thing to do with the least amount of motivation to do is do 10 air squats, they can jump up and do 10 air squats, and that's exercise done. And that might be where you start. So make it simple, achievable and repeatable. So make sure they can turn up every day and do it. Making sure you can achieve the goal that you set out to achieve, and make sure you're successful at it. This is so important. If we're successful, we're likely to do it again. If we're likely to do it again, we're going to build up our tolerance on our discipline and our resilience levels. So this is going to be great. So the next point is, be intentional about it. We don't want to go ahead and just do something for the sake of doing something. We want to do it with intention and desire. Whatever it is that you pick that is simple, achievable and repeatable, it's not just training or doing something, that aspect. It's you've got to think about it. I'm training my discipline muscle here, which is in the brain. It's the thing that we can do is we are rewiring neurological programming here. So it's difficult to do. When you feel like you're not doing it and you feel like unmotivated and you're struggling to get on with it, then don't forget, that's the point. You're training discipline. So be intentional about doing it. So set a reminder, make it repeatable. Final thing, don't rush. It's going to take time. The brain, the mindset, there's a reason why we have that saying, or sort of like, you kind of get to that point in life where it's sort of like you're a bit older and you go, oh, well, I like what I like, I do what I do, and blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. And there's a reason for it. There's a certain sense of comfort in that. Now, we don't always have to live the stories that we tell ourselves. We can tell ourselves a brand new story, but in order to tell ourselves that brand new story requires really, really focused, disciplined work. So don't rush the process. The process will take time, it won't be easy, and it's going to be quite challenging. But don't rush it. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. So allow yourself the time. If it goes a bit wrong, then so be it. We spoke about resilience last week. If you missed that video, the link's in the description so you can go and check that out after this is done. But be resilient. Keep going. It's not going to be easy. Just keep on striving forward. So let's take, for example, like a really good one is getting up 5 minutes early, including weekends. Earlier. Well, let's say, for example, you wake up at 7:30. You do what most people do. You wake up and you go, you turn off your alarm, you pick up your phone and you're scrolling away. So rather than waking up at 7:30, let's try setting your alarm for 6:35. Now, the reason why this is good is because it's simple, it's achievable, it's repeatable, because we have to do it every single day anyway. It's definitely achievable because it's just 5 minutes early. Now, if you're so desperate to hold on to that 5 minutes early, then something's going wrong like a lot earlier on. It's like like basically when you go into bed, and there's probably something going on even further than that. But we can delve into this much later down the line. But that's a really, really good example. It's a really simple one to start off with, and it can just be 5 minutes, and you might think, oh, what's the point in that? But go back to point 4. It's got to be intentional with training discipline. So that's what I think is a good place to start. But write in the comments, let me know where you started. Let me know what your simple, achievable, repeatable task is. Let me know in the comments. I'll make sure I comment back. And that's discipline. I'll catch you next week with a brand new video. And it's going to be, I don't know what it's going to be yet. Haven't got it written down. Anyway, it's going to be there next week. And I'll catch you next week. See you later. Bye.